Hello, welcome back to Pagan Pathways with Jessica. Today, unfortunately, I'm inside recording because we spent the whole day at Lake Tahoe for Mother's Day. This is your video for the Witchy Wisdoms Wednesday. So for Witchy Wisdom Wednesday, today's video is going to be over a Book of Shadows, and I will be providing 23 prompts on Book of Shadow topics with some information. So get a pen and paper and get ready. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you all are going to check out the other ladies' pages. They will also be doing a video today on their Books of Shadows or a topic that has to do with their Book of Shadows. So go check them out because you want to see their perspectives. One last thing before we get started, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe because that helps my channel grow. Okay, we're going to get right into this. So your Book of Shadows is a place where you put all the important information that you've researched into. That way then you have it for reference at a later time if you so need it. And also I find when you write information down, it helps you retain it and remember it. So that's just the thing about a Book of Shadows. Is it necessary to have one? It's not, but I do recommend it. Okay, so the very first page in our Book of Shadows could be our book blessing. No, a book blessing protects your book, and that's why lots of pagans, witches, and Wiccans put a book blessing in there. You need to ask yourself, though, do you want a book blessing? Do you need a book blessing? And will you write your own or use a pre-made one? Those are all questions you ask yourself when you're deciding whether you want to put a book blessing in your Book of Shadows. Your second page could be your dedication page. What's a dedication page? Well, it depends on what you're dedicating yourself to. Is your path that you're following a requirement to dedicate yourself? Do you want to put a page in your Book of Shadows where you write down what path you've chosen, what your dedication is, and those types of things? Or do you want to make a dedication to yourself and put it in your Book of Shadows that you are going to continue to research and build your Book of Shadows? A dedication page can help us keep accountability for what we're doing. Is it necessary? Again, it's up to you. This is your Book of Shadows. These are just prompts that you could use to fill up your Book of Shadows. So a dedication page or a book blessing or any of the other topics we talk about are not something you absolutely have to do, and these are just questions you need to ask yourself so you can figure out if they're what you want. So the next topic we're going to talk about, or the next prompt, it was your ethics and morals. And what is an ethic or moral? Morals are by definition the principle of right and wrong behavior and the goodness and badness of human character. Ethics are a system of moral principles, and I think this page is very important for your Book of Shadows. But again, it is up to you whether you put your morals and ethics inside your Book of Shadows. And you might notice, if you were to write them down now, in 10 years from now, things may have changed. So I always like to do that little extra step by putting stuff like that down so I can see how I've grown or changed as I've matured and gotten older. All right, so that would be your third prompt, is your ethics and morals. For our fourth prompt, we have Witchcraft Traditions. There are thousands of them, and you need to ask yourself if you will stick to the first one, if you want to research other ones, if some are very appealing to you and you want to come back at a later date. Do you want to put a page in your Book of Shadows on the different paths that you have researched? So essentially, as I've said over and over again, this is up to you. These are just prompts, different things to look up. And I would suggest that you research a lot of different paths. And they don't even have to be just on witchcraft or the pagan community. You literally could research all different religions. But that's just me. And again, that's up to you. But that's prompt number 4. Prompt number 5 for your Book of Shadows is holidays. Now, before you go putting holidays in your Book of Shadows, I suggest you take some time to really reflect on holidays that are important to you. Will you keep ones from your old traditions? I certainly celebrate Easter and Christmas. I don't do like the birth of Jesus or the death and resurrection, but I do celebrate the Easter Bunny and things like that with my grandchildren. Or will you just only want to follow the wheel of the year? Will you change everything? I also do not follow the entire wheel of the year. I just celebrate the equinoxes and the solstices because that's what's important to me. So that's what you'll find in my Book of Shadows. Gods and goddesses are our next prompt, and there are quite literally thousands of them as well. And so it could be a little bit complex to get started. However, if you are following a tradition, they typically have gods and goddesses. But then you must decide if you are only going to follow the gods and goddesses of your tradition, or does other gods appeal to you? So research is important. And then when gods do appeal to you, will you make a page and put it in your Book of Shadows? Our next prompt is color association in candle colors. Now, why do I add the color association with candle colors? Because scientifically speaking, colors do affect us emotionally and mentally, and they do each have associations with them, such as a color green. When we see the color of green, we always think about money. Gold and silver could be said the same too, or gold and silver also reminds us of the moon goddess and the sun god. Green could also represent earth, the element of earth. So we already have connotations where the colors are associated, and candle colors definitely plays a part in magic. So now you need to ask yourself, what research will you do? What's important to you? How does candle colors and colors in general have an effect on your practice? And will you add them to your Book of Shadows? Our next prompt is timing correspondences. And timing correspondences are the days of the week, hours of the day, astrological, planetary, or moon phases, and there's probably some other ones. But in any event, which do you follow? Which appeals to you? Which one will you put in your Book of Shadows? Or will you put them all? This is a good one. For our next prompt is altar setup and altar items. Now, when we think of an altar, we think of a space where we can go to create our magic, to a place where we can give thanks, or we can give offerings, or we can ask for assistance. And so the way you set up an altar is extremely personal. However, in some traditions, they have an outline for you. And then with your altar tools, some of us prefer an athame, some of us prefer a wand, some of us absolutely have to have a cauldron. What appeals to you? What do you use? And most importantly, what kind of research will you be doing, and which ones will you put in your Book of Shadows? This prompt is for sacred space. Sacred space to me is important. So how do you feel about sacred space? Will you be adding information in your Book of Shadows about sacred space? How do you create sacred space? Where is your sacred space? Those types of things. So there you are. That's your prompt on sacred space. Here's another good prompt. I love this one. Divination. What is divination? Divination is tools that we use to define our past, our present, and our future. And there's all different types. There's the runes, there's reading fires, there's reading smoke, there's tea leaves, there's palm reading. The list is endless. Now, which ones will you research? Which ones will you use? And which ones will you keep in your Book of Shadows? This is one of my favorite topics for this prompt, and that's on the elements: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. Also, that's what the pentacle represents for us. So how will you add all of that to your Book of Shadows? Will you add it to your Book of Shadows? Do you work with the elements? Do you need to do more research for the Book of Elements? All of that is up to you, but that is our prompt for this one right here, the elements. Meditation is our next prompt. Meditation, scientifically speaking as well, is very good for us physically, emotionally, and mentally. Do you meditate? Do you like meditation? Do you want to learn more about meditation? And will you add meditation to your Book of Shadows? Now we have symbols and sigils. What's a sigil? Do you use sigils? Do you want to learn to create your own? What symbols do you use? What is the importance of symbols? Will you add symbols and sigils to your Book of Shadows? Do you want to add them? That is up to you. This next one is about crystals. And do you like working with crystals? Are you a big user of crystals? Will you be adding your information about the different crystals in your Book of Shadows? Or do you have so much information that it needs its own book? That is one decision that you're going to have to make on your own, but I can give you the prompt as I just did. Next up, one of my favorites, herbs. Do you use herbs quite frequently? Do you like herbal blends? Will you be learning more about herbs? I personally myself have to have a whole book just for herbs, and it's sitting right here, so let me show you what that looks like. I made this book out of a small binder. And then, of course, I have my herbs, oils, salts, and recipes inside this. And if you guys are interested, I can do a small tutorial on how to take a Dollar Tree little binder and make your own herbal book. Or you can make one for crystals as well. But anyhow, I have way too much information on herbs, and I couldn't put it in my Book of Shadows. But perhaps you are more of a crystal user or some other type, and so herbs is a small part that you might want to add to your Book of Shadows. Animals and their meanings. Do you work a lot with animals? Do you have a familiar? Do you have a totem animal? How about a spirit animal? Will you be adding animals and their meanings and the different ways that we interpret them into your Book of Shadows? auras, our energy field. Everything can have an aura. It collects energy and then it puts that off, and we can feel and sometimes see the auras. Is this an interesting subject to you? Are you already well versed in it? Do you want to learn more? And will it make for a page in your book of shadows? Chakras. What do we know about chakras? What are they? How do they affect us? Do you know a lot about them? Do you want to know more about them? And will you add them to your book of shadows? Numerology. Is this a subject that's very interesting to you? Perhaps you already know so much, but numbers can definitely play a part in our magical craft. Or perhaps it doesn't for you, and that's okay as well. But this is our prompt, numberology. Will you be doing some more research, and will you add it to your book of shadows? Our next prompt is dreams and meanings. And so many people always ask about dreams and meanings. Are you one of those people? Or perhaps you're already well versed in them, but to add it to your book of shadows, is that something that appeals to you? Or are you just like, it's not that important? Either way, it's your book of shadows, and you should only put the information in there that you want to use. Next, we have important dates in history. Is it important to you to add some of the important dates in history into your book of shadows? If it is, this prompt is perfect for you. And what types of important dates in history would you like to record in your book of shadows? Do you already have a list together? And do you know it's completely okay to add this information to your book of shadows, but it is not necessary. So if you don't want to, then just don't skip this part. Last but certainly not least is spell writing. So this is our 23rd prompt, and I'm going to link my video up there for you to look back if you need help with spell writing. Also, in my Pagan Pathways group on Facebook, I have a PDF that you can download to help you with your spell writing that's completely free. So if you would like to join, my link is in the description and in my about section. So anyway, spell writing is our last one. Will you make a page in your book of shadows that gives information on how to write spells? And also, will you put spells in your book of shadows, or will you make a separate book for just your spells? That again is up to you. All right, witches, there you go. Your 23 prompts on your book of shadows. This will help you build your book of shadows in a way that is perfect for you and your path. You only have to add the information that's important to you. Anyway, I want to make a note that I'm working on an ebook for these 23 prompts. In that ebook, you will have space to write. There's lots of questions and some detailed information. The ebook will be free, and as soon as it's ready, I will let everyone know. I want to make one more point here. I have a Pagan Pathways group on Facebook, and if you join it, there are several PDF files with books available. And if you're wondering about the spell writing, I have a PDF for that as well that you can print out and use to help you write your spells. All right, witches, I'm going to get out of here. You have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk soon.